Hey guys, welcome back to Chain's TCG store. Today I'm going to have a video on investing in Yu-Gi-Oh! I've had a few people leave comments on some of my videos that they are looking to get into buying and selling and wanted to kind of know the ropes, but of course that's kind of too long to answer in a comment. So I figured I would do a video and kind of go over the basics in I guess a high level way. I'm going to try not to rant too much, but I guess first we're going to break it up into investing in singles, one, and then two would be sealed product investments. So investing in singles, I usually kind of break things up into different categories. So you have investing into staples, you have collector's cards, and then you have, I guess I would say, archetypes. And when I'm looking to invest into staples or tech cards, I'm usually looking for cards that aren't currently seeing play, are a little bit underrated, or could be good against certain strategies in the future. But also looking at like historical prices in play and seeing, let's say, so for example, Droll and Lockbird, um, if it was down at $5-6, but in the past when it saw a lot of play, even the commons were going for 15 to 20 bucks. That would be a card that I'd want to look to invest into, expecting that, of course, it will come back into the format at some point. And then if you're looking at something like a collector's card, it's going to be something that you're going to be sitting on for a while. Collector's cards tend to go up in value, especially when the economy is good. But it's very slow growth. It's not going to grow overnight. And then there also can be a crossover between collectability, say like a Starlight Rare, like DD Crow, where it's got the collectability, but also competitive play, which those are kind of in the sweet spot. Those tend to move a little bit quicker than just say a normal Starlight Rare. And then with collector's cards, you have to like be okay with them going down in value over the next few months and then kind of springing back up a little bit, but they tend to move slow. So if you're investing in collector's items, that's something that I don't delegate a lot of money into. I definitely still buy those cards, but they do move slow, so it's something you have to sit on for a long time. On the bright side, you do get to hold on to pretty cool stuff for a while and have it in your collection binder, but you just have to be aware that that's going to be the situation with collector's items. With archetypes, these are a little bit risky as well. I do like buying them because I like testing them out, playing with them, and having fun with them while I am waiting for them to go up in price. But usually you're kind of betting that that archetype is going to get some support in the future and then see play and be good. And then in that case scenario, you're going to make a lot of money on that archetype if you bought it. But at the same time, you could buy something like Black Wings and they never get support and they just don't do anything. Ironically, Black Wings have gone up in price quite a bit for some of the older copies, but I do think archetype investing into archetypes is pretty good. And one of the things that I do if I am investing into archetypes is I look to the OCG to see if they're getting support and if those decks are doing well with that new support. And if they are, then I do look at investing into those archetypes. I guess one of those would be like, let's say, branded Despia when they got the structure deck over in the OCG. That deck started doing really, really well. And so I started investing into some of the branded cards that we already had from Burst of Destiny and Dawn of Majesty. And that ended up doing really well. I guess as well with single cards, it's important when you're looking at just cards in general to like ask yourself those questions. Is this a collector's card? Is this a meta card? Is it viable to see play in the future? Is it hard to get? Meaning, are there multiple printings? Has it not seen a printing in years? And then also, like from a collector's standpoint, or even like playability standpoint, ask yourself who's going to be buying these cards in the future. Because for say like for archetypes, if you look at Flunderees, it's actually one of the best decks right now. It's been doing really well. There's still not a large base of players that play it, even though it's extremely cheap to play. And I'm not sure exactly why that is, other than it's not like the most exciting deck to play. So those are things to keep in mind. Just if you know that an archetype was really popular in the past and it looks like it's going to get some support, then that might be kind of like the good archetype to invest into. But like right now, if Flundry's got some more support announced, I imagine the cards would go up in price, but not a lot, because that's not really going to change the base of players. If it's already a tier 1 deck and the cards are, all below $20, I just don't expect it to do much if they do get further support, because you still have to have people buy the cards, even if it's a really good archetype. Some of the examples I would have for like the staple cards is, like I said, Droll Mockbird. And then one I did really well on was Ultimate Rare Super Poly. They were like $55 at one point, and it's because they weren't seeing play whatsoever, but I did invest into them, and I knew they would do well at some point, because A, it's an old card that got, a really high rarity upgrade. But B, it's just a broken card, and it just needs the right deck to play it in the right format to play it. And it's really powerful, and now it's still seeing play. And it's, I think, still above $120 per copy. So yeah, and then also cards like, Triple Tactics Talent. If it's not seen play now, it will at some point. Still a really good card. DD Crow I did really good on, as well as I got the ultra rares when they were like $1.50, $2, because they weren't in the format at the time, and now they're at $10 now. Same with Ghost Ogre and Valor. So just some things to think about when you're investing in singles. Definitely I would look towards what you expect things to do in the short term and long term, and not just buy cards because you like them. And that's fine if you're doing that for your own, play reasons or your own collection reasons. But if you're looking to invest in cards, try to think about why you think it would go up in the future. So next I'll kind of go into sealed product a little bit. I'm definitely a lot more invested in singles than sealed product. And it's because sealed product is such a hard space to invest. Products can flop unexpectedly, and I'll kind of go over some examples of that, where I would have thought it'd be a good investment, but it ended up, not really tanking, but just didn't really go anywhere as far as price. But there is a lot of opportunity here as well. And we'll talk about some sets that did really well over the past couple of years. So I guess one tip I'll start off with on sealed product. The one advantage we have is we can see products that are released in the OCG before they're released here. So my example would be like Power of the Elements. We see that there's multiple archetypes in there that are doing really well, as well as some staple cards that are getting printed that a lot of people are going to want to pick up. So when we see that it's the two archetypes out of that set are dominating in the OCG, I would expect them to do at least decently well in the TCG as well. And so that set ended up, I think MSRP on boxes are usually like 60, 65. And it's now like $80. And that's a set that I invested into. Not sealed, but I did buy a box to open, which I wouldn't really call an investment though, actually, because I was just buying it to open it for the channel. But if I was looking to invest in a sealed product this last year, that would have been the one for sure. But some of the things I will say to look for in sealed product is going to be high rarity staples, and also the quality of the new archetypes. So I guess, again, Power of the Elements is a perfect example of this. And then also some other good examples are, Burst of Destiny, Grand Creators. They had really good staple cards in there that a lot of people can use in various decks, as well as new really powerful archetypes, which is what you want. If you have one without the other, it's just not going to make a well-rounded set. I guess my example of sets that did well with high rarity staples, as well as really good archetypes, would be Rise of the Duelist. Obviously, still sealed today is like $225 per box, which is crazy. But there's some other factors there with that box, because it was during 2020 when they were not printing a lot of product, because they knew that tournaments were canceled, so they didn't expect people to buy the set really, which was not really the case. A lot of people wanted the set, so that set ended up being bought out almost completely, right out the get-go. But they had multiple high rarity competitive staples like Triple Tactics Talent, Forbidden Droplet, and then they also had Dogmatica, which was also pretty high rarity as well, and it was an extremely successful archetype. out of that set at the time. It's not as good now, Dogmatica, but was really powerful at the time. And then Power of the Elements, of course, like we talked, is another good example. They've got, as far as the staples, not as much. They do have like Ultimate Slayer, which I think is pretty good. I'm trying to think. They have a good super poly target in it that's ultra rare. But the archetypes are so good in that set that it almost kind of doesn't matter. Like they have some staples, but they also have really good like tier 1 archetypes, 2 of them. Burst of Destiny did really good because they had a high rarity staple in DPE, which was seen play, and I would say like almost every deck that I played against, including me. But you also had Sword Soul, which had a long stint of tier 1 status, that also being a high rarity deck. Trying to think. Oh, they also had a bunch of other high rarity staples as well, like the Small World, which was going for like $40 at one point, and some others that I'm not thinking of right now. I think what was it, Heavenly something, that protects your back row, and then like is able to search for something from your back row that was over $20 as well as a secret rare. Incredible Ecclesia, which was seeing some play with Albaz and some with Sword Soul. I think more Sword Soul, really. I think it's only seen play as like at one copy with Branded Despia. But that at one point was like $60-$70 per copy. Now it's back down to like 25, but I think that's because people are expecting reprints in the megatons. But just a great set overall. I think that was definitely the best set last year. But yeah, that's just a good example of where they did really well with a sealed product, and the sealed product won the price. I think at one point it was $90 a box. Grand Creators also, that was early this year. You had Punk and Exosister. Exosister not doing as well as I would have thought by now, but still a good deck. Punk has had a lot of success as an engine. I think it's better as an engine than like a real deck, but still a pretty good archetype. And then you also had the staples as far as the adventure token package, which was wildly successful when that first came out, and is still seeing play today. And that's just going to come in and out of formats depending on what decks are doing well. But I've actually been seeing sprites playing your adventure package, and it's been like really strong. So it'd be interesting to see if that becomes like the dominant way to play that deck. I'm trying to think what else is in that set. I think for the most part that was it. You also had like, I guess, high rarity Solemn Strike, Emergency Teleport, and what was the other one? Torrential Tribute. But those still are kind of low in price, honestly. I would have thought those would be higher than now. Not Solemn Strike, really. I kind of understand where that's at, but Torrential Tribute is a crazy card that should be much more expensive than 50. But I guess that's kind of my examples for sealed product that did really well. They're definitely few and far between. There's a lot more sets that are just average or below average, or or terrible, not really below average, because I wouldn't say that there's many above average sets. But examples of falling short on sealed product. So Lightning Overdrive, the archetypes kind of flopped. The really only staple in the set was Ruddy Rose, which was, saw play for a little while, but it never was wildly expensive. And then you also had Diviner the Herald, which was always the top of the set. And it was really only seen play in Drytron when it came out, and then Drytron fell off. And it's only been like rogue decks playing Diviner the Herald. Even though it's keeping a pretty high price point, it's just because it's the only value in the set. If you look at like, what was the archetype? The Amazements, there was some hype around them when they came out, but the deck just really struggles, and so it just never did anything. And now the core is basically worthless. So they just didn't do a good job with that set as far as putting a high rarity staples in it, as well as it just didn't have great archetypes in it. So that set flopped over time. Another example would be Genesis Impact, where you had one really good archetype, and I mean, I guess Evil Twin was okay, but not tier 1 by any measure. But also just didn't have like really great collector rares or like any higher rarity staples and ultra rare. So it just didn't do well in price. It's always been one of the on the lower end. And then Blazing Vortex. This is kind of an example of they had high rarity staple, but they didn't have archetypes. The archetypes were absolutely awful. You had War Rock, which is just a big ongoing joke. And then you also had Armed Dragon, which it's Armed Dragon. Of course, it wasn't going to work out. The only card you have in here is Pot of Prosperity, which is still above $100, but if the average person buying a box isn't going to pull that card, you'd have to open at least 3 boxes on average to pull it. So it's just not worth opening. So that although they did really well with the staple that they put in it, that's the only thing they have going for that set. The other staples that they printed in that set just flopped, like Heavenly, or what was it called? Heavenly Zephyr, I believe it's called. Just completely flopped. It was pretty good in theory, but just not generic enough, so that flopped as well. But overall, I think Blazing Vortex was the absolute worst set of last year. And then if I was going to give you an example of a set that's just like I would say is average, and I expected it to do really well, but it didn't, would be what's the set called? Phantom Rage. That's it. So Phantom Rage, you had, and this happened at different times. You had 2 tier 1 decks, but they just became tier 1 at different times. I think right off the bat, Virtual World got pretty good within the coming months after the set release and was tier 1. And then at the start of the next year, we had Tri Brigade being really, really good and being tier 1 as well, topping a lot of events consistently. So archetypes, they did really good in that set. The third archetype that they had was Dual Avatar, I believe, which was terrible, but they had 2 good archetypes. That's all you really need. As far as high rarity staples, you also had Secret Rare Zeus, which was amazing. One of probably the best Xyz monster of all time. And then you also had Alpha the Master Beast, which I thought was going to be a lot more widely played than it ever was, but it really wasn't, and kind of fell off. That card started around $40-$50, day one, and then immediately dropped. And I think now it got reprinted, but I think the secret rare is now like $10, and the ultra rare reprint is still like $1. So that was a set that I really thought was going to do well long term, and it just hasn't yet. And maybe it will at some point, but I think at this point that I just don't think so. Not unless like Starlight Zeus becomes really, really expensive or something like that. But I guess you do have Starlight Hita, which is pretty good as well. But yeah, I really expected that set to do well, but it just didn't have it needed maybe one more staple that was, really expensive, but just kind of fell short. So some tips and tricks here. So it's important to set targets when you're looking at either sealed product or like singles. If you're just blindly going into buying a card and you maybe didn't buy it at a good price, or you weren't thinking about what would be a good price to get it at, and what would be a good price to sell it at, it's going to be pretty hard to do well. I think a lot of times I will have a list of cards that I want to pick up, and then we'll have like set prices that I'm willing to pay for them. And if they don't hit that price, then I just don't pick it up. And then also, situations change, and maybe all of a sudden something on your list is going to see a ton of play coming. For a fact it's going to see a ton of play like in 2 or 3 months. Like let's say that archetype card is getting support and it's going to be a tier 1 deck. Then maybe you do just go ahead and pull the trigger and buy it because you're expecting the target price to go up. But for the most part, I think setting targets is really important. Even at a base level, like maybe you don't have to be very specific at what price you're selling it for or buying it for, but have a general concept of what you're expecting the card to do. Let's see here. So I guess this is a really important one. So another part of investing and like maintaining the value of the portfolio of cards you're having, or it doesn't even have to be cards, it could be any investment really, is knowing when to cut your losses. For example, let's say you own a secret rare Appaloosa and most likely it's going to be reprinted in the megatins this year, like let's say that, back in 2020. If it's currently selling at $100, go ahead and just sell it and either put that money on the side to rebuy it after the reprint. I did this in 2020 and the secret rares went down to $20 for first edition. I ended up picking one back up for $20, and then I ended up picking up some of the reprint ultra rares and gold rares, which ended up, climbing back up in price quite a bit. And I made quite a bit of money back on that, that original sell and rebuy. Whereas if you had just held on to the $100 card, you're just going to neg money. So like I think now a secret rare Appaloosa is going for $45 or so for first edition. So you'd be, in that case, if you just held on to it and didn't do anything, you'd be down $55. Whereas now I'm up in value because I sold it and then reinvested it after the reprint, which is really, really important. I think even I do this too for the decks that I'm playing. Like, as we're coming into August, so we know, or the end of August, we know reprints are coming next month for the megatins. I just start selling cards that, even if it's decks that I'm playing, I'm okay waiting, not playing for a couple of weeks and just waiting to repick up those cards. Like, for example, I'm selling my branded openings right now, and I'll play something else until I get the reprints back. It's just not worth holding on to for that, for that example, $15 super rares, knowing that they're going to be worthless when they get like an ultra or secret rare reprint. So I guess that's one of the biggest tips that I can give you, because I know a lot of people that want to buy and sell, but they hold their stock through reprints, which is, I just think, just not a good idea. I'm trying to think if there's anything else besides that. Also, yeah, I will say, if you have like specific questions, since I am kind of trying to keep it higher level, let me know. I'll definitely answer you. I did go ahead and go over the like selling aspect already on TCG Player, like how you do it. This is more like the investing advice part of it. So if you want to check that out, go check out the selling on TCG Player video. I'll just link it underneath here. That way you can find it. But I think that's about all that I wanted to go over as far as investing for right now. But let me know what your questions are. If we have a bunch, then I might just do a follow-up video. But for now, I want to try to keep this as short as possible. So thanks for watching. I will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.